For 3 years, I quietly sent money every month to keep my parents from losing everything after my stepfather's cancer diagnosis, and the night my mom raised a glass to toast my brother for saving this family, I smiled, opened my phone, and asked one question that changed everything. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss how this ends. And we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. I want to be honest about something before I tell you this story. I almost didn't go to Christmas dinner that year. Not because I was busy, not because I had other plans, but because something in my gut had been humming at a low frequency for months, the way a smoke detector does when the battery is dying. Not loud enough to make you act, just loud enough to make you uneasy. I ignored it. I drove the 3 hours anyway. I brought a pecan pie from a bakery and a gift bag with my stepdad's favorite peppermint chocolates, and I told myself that whatever I was feeling was probably just exhaustion. I had been working 60-hour weeks as a financial compliance officer for a regional bank, preparing for an internal audit that had consumed my entire fall. My brain had been running hot for so long that I genuinely couldn't tell the difference between intuition and anxiety anymore. The house looked better than it had in years. I noticed that right away. My stepdad Frank had put up the Christmas lights the way he used to before the diagnosis, when he still had the energy to stand on a ladder. The driveway was freshly sealed. There was a wreath on the door that I was pretty sure cost more than anything my parents would typically spend. I stood in the cold for a moment before knocking, my breath fogging in the December air, looking at the house and feeling something I couldn't quite name. The door opened before I could knock. My mom Linda was standing there, already holding a dish towel, already smiling in that practiced way she had when she was trying to establish a particular mood before anything could disrupt it. "Cassidy, you made it." She pulled me in for a hug that was warm but quick, the kind that says hello without really stopping. Come in, come in. Derek and Nicole are already here." I stepped inside. The house smelled like pine and pot roast, and there was Christmas music playing from the Bluetooth speaker. My brother had given my parents 2 years ago a gift he had made a significant production of presenting. The living room had been decorated more elaborately than usual. There were candles on the mantel, a small arrangement of poinsettias on the coffee table, a bottle of wine open and already half empty on the kitchen counter. My brother Derek was in the armchair by the fireplace, the good chair, the one my stepfather always sat in. He was wearing a cashmere sweater I had never seen before and laughing at something on his phone. His wife Nicole was arranging appetizers on a platter, with the focused energy of a woman performing a role she had rehearsed. Frank was on the couch. He looked thinner than the last time I had seen him, which had been Thanksgiving, but his eyes were bright when he saw me. "There she is," he said, and started to get up. "Stay put," I said, crossing the room to hug him where he sat. He held on a little longer than usual. I let him. Derek glanced up from his phone. "Hey, Cass." He didn't stand. "Hey." I set the pie on the counter and shrugged off my coat. Nicole gave me a smile that was technically correct in every feature, but somehow communicated nothing. "Wine?" my mom offered. "Already pouring." "Sure." I settled onto the couch beside Frank, and we talked for a while about nothing in particular. The weather coming in from the north, the neighbor's new dog, a show he had been watching. It felt almost normal. I almost let myself relax. Dinner was called about 40 minutes later. We crowded around the table, which had been set with a tablecloth I recognized from holidays growing up, now slightly yellowed at the edges, but ironed flat. Mom had made pot roast and green beans and rolls from scratch, and there was a cranberry sauce that Frank made every year from a recipe his grandmother had given him. I sat down across from Nicole. Derek took the seat at my mom's right hand. It was Frank who said grace, the way he always did, slow and genuine, his hands flat on the table. When he finished, everyone reached for serving dishes, and the familiar, comfortable noise of a family meal began. That was when my mom set down the gravy boat, picked up her wine glass, and said, "Before we start, I want to say something." I looked up. Her eyes were bright. She was smiling in a way that was real this time, unguarded, the way she looked when she was genuinely moved by something. She looked at Derek. "I know the last few years have been hard on all of us," she said, her voice catching slightly on the word hard in the way people do when they've rehearsed a speech and the emotion surprises them anyway. Frank's treatment, the bills, everything we've been through. We almost didn't make it. And I just want to say, in front of everyone, that we did make it because of my son." She raised her glass toward Derek. Derek and Nicole stepped up when it mattered. They kept the lights on and the roof over our heads when I didn't know how we were going to manage. I don't say it enough, but I am so grateful. This family is whole because of you two. Derek dipped his head with a modesty that was perfectly calibrated. Nicole reached over and squeezed his hand. I was holding a dinner roll. I was aware of holding it because my fingers had gone tight around it without me deciding to do that. Frank was looking at his plate. He wasn't smiling. He was doing something with his jaw that he did sometimes when he was trying to decide whether to say something. I looked at my mother. "Derek," I said, keeping my voice completely even. "I didn't know you'd been helping out. That's great." "We do what we can," Derek said, taking a sip of wine. "How long has that been going on?" "Oh, a while." He waved a hand in a vague way. "Since Dad's second round, I guess." My stepfather's second round of treatment had started 28 months ago. I knew this because I had set up the payment arrangement 29 months ago, the month before Derek was apparently claiming credit for. I looked at my mom. She was serving pot roast with the focused attention of someone who has decided that serving pot roast is the most important activity currently happening. "Mom," I said, "the arrangement we set up, the account at Midwest Federal." "Cassidy, let's just eat," she said, not looking up. "I'm just asking a question. And I'm asking you to let us have a nice Christmas dinner." She looked at me then, her eyes carrying a warning that was wrapped in a smile. "Please." I put the roll down. I picked up my fork. "I want you to understand something about my particular professional background, because it matters for what comes next. I am a financial compliance officer. I spend my days designing and auditing internal controls, identifying where money moves incorrectly, and building documentation systems that can reconstruct exactly what happened to a dollar from the moment it entered an institution to the moment it left. I am not in the habit of losing track of where my money goes. I am, in fact, constitutionally incapable of it. 29 months earlier, when Frank's oncologist had delivered the news that the cancer had returned and would require a significantly more aggressive and expensive treatment protocol, I had sat down at my laptop and run the numbers. My parents' insurance covered the bulk of the medical costs, but the gaps were real. Frank's disability income had been reduced when he'd had to stop his part-time consulting work. The mortgage had 18 years left on it. There was credit card debt that had accumulated during the first round of treatment that was accruing interest at a rate that would compound the problem faster than they could address it on their own. I called my mom. I told her what I was looking at. I told her I wanted to help. We agreed on a number $1,800 a month, transferred on the first of every month, directly into a dedicated account I helped her open at Midwest Federal that was separate from the joint account she shared with Frank. The idea was to keep it clean, keep it simple, give her a single account she managed for household expenses without Frank having to see every transaction during a period when he was already dealing with enough. I set up the auto draft from my bank. I documented every transfer in my own spreadsheet, which I kept updated the first of every month when I received the confirmation. I did not do this because I distrusted my mother. I did it because I am who I am, and records are records. The reason I had not audited the account she was pulling, from the reason I had not looked at what she was doing with the money once it arrived, was that she was my mother. I had set up the structure and trusted her to execute it. In 29 months, she had never called me with a concern. She had never said the money wasn't enough or that something had come up. She had said, every month or two when we spoke, that things were managing and Frank was doing as well as could be expected. I had believed her. That is the part I have to sit with. Dinner continued. Derek talked about a trip he and Nicole were planning to Portugal in the spring. Nicole talked about renovating their kitchen. Frank ate slowly and mostly listened. My mother laughed at the right moments and kept everyone's glasses filled. I ate my pot roast. I was doing arithmetic in my head, and I was not liking the results. $1,800 a month, 29 months, $52,200. That was what I had transferred into the Midwest Federal account. Every dollar of it documented, every confirmation number logged, every memo line the same. Mom and Frank household support. If Derek and Nicole had been covering expenses for the past 28 months at a comparable level, where was that money? What account was it in? Why had my mother never mentioned, in any of our regular phone calls, that Derek had started contributing? Why had she called me in a panic 14 months ago when Frank's insurance had an unexpected gap and she needed $3,000 for a procedure if Derek was taking care of things? I had wired her the $3,000. I had documented it separately from the monthly transfers. I thought about the wreath on the door, the freshly sealed driveway, the bottle of wine that had been open when I arrived, a label I recognized as costing somewhere around $60. I thought about Derek's cashmere sweater and Nicole's new highlights and the trip to Portugal. I thought about my own apartment, 600 square feet in a building with a broken elevator that I had been too busy to complain about, and the vacation I had not taken in 3 years, and the winter coat I was still wearing that I had bought in my late 20s and kept meaning to replace. I put my fork down. "Mom," I said, "I want to ask you something and I want you to be straight with me." The table went quiet. "Cassidy," Derek said, his tone already shifted into something warning. "I'm talking to Mom." I kept my eyes on her. "The Midwest Federal account, the one we set up together, is it still active?" My mother set down her own fork very carefully. "This is not the time." "I think it is." "You're doing this on purpose," Nicole said, her voice pleasant in the way that a paper cut is pleasant superficially smooth until it suddenly isn't. "You can't stand that Derek has been so present for your parents, and you haven't been." "I've been present," I said. "I've been present in a very specific financial way that I'd like to discuss." "What does that mean?" Derek asked. "It means I'd like to see the bank statements." I looked at my mother. "For the household account, the one I've been contributing to for the last 29 months. "You've been contributing?" Derek's voice carried exactly the right note of mild surprise, the kind that's rehearsed. "Yes," I said. "Have you?" The silence lasted about 4 seconds. 4 seconds is actually quite long when no one at a dinner table is eating or speaking. "Derek has done more for this family than you could understand," my mother said, and her voice had shifted now, sharper. A frequency I recognized from childhood as the one she used when she felt backed into a corner. "He's been here, physically here, helping, dealing with doctors and insurance companies, and—" "I don't doubt that," I said, and I didn't. "Showing up is real. I live 3 hours away, and I showed up when I could, but I couldn't always." "I'm asking about the money specifically, because you just said in front of everyone that Derek kept the roof over your heads, and I'd like to understand how, because I have a pretty clear picture of where the money for the roof has been coming from." "Don't do this," Frank said quietly. I looked at him. He was looking at the table, his jaw working again. "Frank," I said, "do you know about the Midwest Federal account?" He didn't answer for a moment. Then he said, very quietly, "Your mother handles the finances, the same thing I had been told, the same thing that had allowed me to set up an account and transfer money into it every month without my stepfather ever seeing what his wife was doing with it." I reached into my bag on the floor beside my chair. I took out my phone, not with drama, not with a speech. I just unlocked it. "What are you doing?" Derek asked. "Checking something." I opened my banking app. I pulled up the transfer history for the account the autodraft had been running from. "I'm going to show Dad what I've been sending, and then I'm going to pull up the Midwest Federal statements, which I have access to because my name is on that account, and we're going to figure out together where the money went." "Those are Mom's private finances," Derek said, his voice harder now. "And mine," I said. "My transfers, my name, my right." I turned the phone to face Frank first. I showed him the autodraft line items. $1,800, first of every month. 29 entries, clean as a ledger. He stared at the screen for a long time without speaking. "Linda," he said. "Frank, I can explain. You told me Derek was covering the difference." His voice was very quiet. "Every time I asked, you said Derek and Nicole were handling it. They helped in other ways," my mom said, her voice pitching up. "Derek drove you to appointments. He dealt with the insurance denials." "That has value, Andrew. That is not nothing. His name is Frank," I said. She blinked. I know his name. Then use it. I was scrolling to the Midwest Federal app now, and I agree that driving to appointments has value. I'm not disputing that. I'm asking about the money. The Midwest Federal app opened. I navigated to the transaction history. Here is what I was expecting to find. $1,800 coming in on the first of every month. Payments going out to the mortgage company and utilities and medical billing. Maybe some grocery transactions. The normal flow of a household running on a tight but managed budget. Here is what I found instead. $1,800 in. First of every month. That part was as expected. And then, irregularly but frequently, transfers out. Not to the mortgage company. Not to the utility providers. Venmo. PayPal. A name I recognized. I scrolled without speaking for a moment. I was doing the same thing I did when I was reviewing a flagged account at work. Cataloging before concluding. Making sure I had the full picture before I said anything out loud. The mortgage payments were there. They had been made. But they had been made in varying amounts. Some months short, some months catching up. A pattern that looked like managed delay rather than consistent payment. The kind of pattern that, if you ran it out far enough, would start to show up as delinquency. I looked for the date of the last full mortgage payment. September. It was December. I looked up. When did you last pay the mortgage? I asked. My mother's face did something complicated. It moved through several expressions very quickly. Dismissal, then calculation, then something that looked like the beginning of panic, and then it settled into the flat, careful blankness of someone deciding not to answer. The mortgage is handled, she said. I'm looking at the mortgage servicer portal right now, I said, which was true because I had navigated there while she was speaking, logging in with the credentials she had given me 3 years ago when I helped her set up paperless billing. It has not been paid since September. You are 3 months behind. The account status is, I looked at the screen. Pre-foreclosure. The word landed on the table like something dropped from a height. Frank's face went gray. Derek stood up. Not aggressively, he stood up the way people do when they're trying to create movement in a situation that has become very still. Okay, Cassidy. Okay. You've made your point. You're the smart one. You've got the phone and the app and the numbers. Can we maybe take a breath? I don't need a breath, I said. I need someone to tell me where the money went. Things got complicated, my mom said. She was gripping her napkin. You don't understand how complicated it gets. Managing everything. The medical bills keep changing. The insurance reimbursements are delayed. It's not as simple. Mom, I turned the phone so she could see the Venmo transfers. These are to Derek and Nicole's account. Over the last 14 months, I let her look at the number. She looked at it. Derek looked at it. There was a moment where I thought Derek was going to say something that would at least be honest in its dishonesty. Something like that was a reimbursement, or we had an arrangement. Instead, he said, Nicole's mom needed help. I stared at him. Her mom was going through something, he said. It was a loan. We were going to pay it back. You took money from our parents' household account, I said slowly, to loan to Nicole's mother. It was a short term. Derek. Frank's voice cut through the room. He wasn't loud. He was the opposite of loud. He was the kind of quiet that comes from a person who has spent 2 years fighting for their life and has very little patience left for waste. How much? Derek looked at Nicole. Nicole looked at the poinsettias. We were going to replace it, Derek said. I had a deal that was going to come through in October. It didn't come through the way we expected, but the money is still coming. It just, how much? Frank said again. I looked at the total I had tallied while they were speaking. I set the phone on the table in front of my stepfather. Screen up, number visible. He looked at it for a long time. $21,400. Transferred from the account my mother managed, the account I had been funding, to Derek and Nicole's Venmo in varying increments over 14 months. While the mortgage payment had quietly begun to slip, I want to see your bank account, Frank said to Derek. Right now. Log in and show me. Frank, that's not. Log in, Frank said. Or get out of my house. Derek's jaw worked. He picked up his own phone with the slow, reluctant movement of a man walking to something he would rather avoid. He opened his banking app. He turned it to face Frank. Frank looked at it. Then he handed it to me without a word. I looked at the balance. Then I looked at the transaction history. The current balance in Derek and Nicole's joint checking account was $412. The transaction history showed, over the past 4 months, a series of purchases that told a specific story, a hotel in Nashville in October, which matched the dates of a music festival I had seen Derek post about on Instagram, a jewelry purchase from a retailer I recognized as mid to high end, a car payment for a vehicle I had only seen once, parked in their driveway at Thanksgiving, new enough that it still had the dealer plates, restaurant charges that ran $40, $60, $90 multiple times a week. There was also a charge, 3 weeks ago, from a ticket resale platform. The charge was $438. Below it, the balance before that charge had been $850. Below that, a transfer in. From Midwest Federal, $75. My mother had sent Derek and Nicole $75 3 weeks ago from the account I paid into, while the mortgage sat 3 months unpaid so that Derek could buy resale tickets to something. I set the phone down. Nicole's mom didn't need help, I said. Did she? Nicole said nothing. The money went to the hotel in Nashville. And the car. And dinners. I looked at my brother. How long have you known the mortgage wasn't being paid? Derek said nothing. Derek. My voice had gone to a register I use at work when I'm interviewing someone about a discrepancy, and I already know the answer and I need them to say it out loud. Did you know about the foreclosure notice? My mother made a sound. Mom opened it, Frank said, and his voice was hollow now, drained of its earlier quiet authority. He was looking at his wife of 11 years, with the expression of a man rearranging his understanding of a very long period of time. She opens the mail. She told me everything was current. I was managing it, my mother said, her voice high and defensive. I was going to fix it before it got to anything serious. I just needed a little more time. 3 months behind isn't a little more time, I said. This is a formal pre-foreclosure status. If it isn't reinstated, the process moves forward. Then help them. Derek turned to me, and the mask was off now, the cashmere sweater warm brother presentation, replaced by something uglier and more honest. That's what you're here for, right? That's the whole point of Cassidy. She's the responsible one. She fixes things, so fix it. I looked at him for a long moment. I want to be clear about something, I said. I have sent $52,200 to this household over the last 29 months. I have done this while living in a 600-square-foot apartment and driving a car with 200,000 miles on it and not taking a vacation in 3 years. I have done it because Frank is sick, and because my parents needed help, and because that is what you do for your family. I paused. You have taken $21,000 from the account I funded and spent it on hotel rooms and a car and concert tickets, and you sat there 20 minutes ago and let Mom toast you for saving this family. Derek didn't say anything. The deal that was going to come through in October, I said. What was it? He looked at Nicole. Real estate, Nicole said. We were flipping a property. What property? It fell through, Derek said. The financing fell through. Okay, I said. Then I'd like to see the contract. Or the proof of earnest money. Or any documentation that this was a real transaction. We don't just carry that around, Cassidy. No, I said. But I can pull up the county property records right now and search your names as buyers or listed parties on any transaction in the last 18 months. Do you want me to do that? Nicole stood up. She did it quietly, picking up her wine glass, walking to the kitchen. She stood at the sink with her back to the room. There's no property, Frank said. It wasn't a question. Derek pressed his mouth together. There was going to be, he said finally. It's a market we were looking at. We had a realtor we were talking to. It wasn't a done deal yet. It was a plan. You told Mom it was done, Frank said. I told her we had a path. You told her you were going to pay off the mortgage in a lump sum by November, Frank said. She told me that. She said you promised. Derek rubbed his face with both hands. In the kitchen, Nicole set down her wine glass. I could see from where I was sitting that her hands were not steady. How much debt do you have? I asked Derek. That's my business. It became my business when you spent money I sent to keep this house out of foreclosure on your lifestyle, I said. How much? Frank looked at his stepson and said, very quietly, "Tell her." Derek looked at the tablecloth. The number came out in pieces. The car loan, which he had taken out 8 months ago when his previous car was repossessed, a detail my mother had not mentioned when I called during that period, and she had seemed strained. The credit card balances, which he listed in a clipped, embarrassed monotone. A personal loan from a coworker that he had not repaid. The total, when I added it in my head, was somewhere north of $60,000. And then my mother said something very quietly, in a voice so small it almost didn't reach across the table. I co-signed the car. Frank turned to look at his wife. Linda. He needed the credit, she said. He had the bad stretch, and I co-signed. I didn't think it would. You co-signed a car loan for someone who had just had their car repossessed, I said, using your credit. Credit that is already carrying a mortgage that is 3 months delinquent. My mother was crying now. It wasn't dramatic, it was the quiet, private kind. The kind that happens when a person finally stops managing something they've been managing for a very long time. Frank put his hands flat on the table. He looked at them. He looked at the pot roast, which was sitting in the middle of the table untouched now. The Christmas dinner no one was eating. I need everyone to stop talking for a minute, he said. The room went quiet. He sat in that quiet for a while. The Christmas music had looped back to the beginning. I registered the opening notes of something instrumental and soft, incongruously peaceful. Then he looked at Derek. You have to leave, Frank said. Frank, tonight. You and Nicole, tonight. It's Christmas. I know what day it is. Frank's voice carried something that I recognized from the 2 years I had watched him go through treatment, the particular steadiness of a man who has learned to conserve what he has. I've been sick for 2 years, Derek. I've been scared and I've been tired, and I've been trying to protect your mother from how scared I was, and the whole time I thought, he stopped. He pressed his lips together. I thought we were okay. I thought you were handling it. I thought there was some version of this where things were going to be all right. They will be, Derek started. No, Frank said. They won't be all right because you were handling it. They'll be all right because Cassidy has been handling it for 29 months. While you were spending the money she sent. Derek looked at me. And in that look, I want to be honest about this, I did not see remorse. I saw calculation, the specific expression of a person trying to figure out what play is still available to them. Look, he said, I'll pay it back. I will. I'll figure out the car situation, and Nicole and I will get on a payment plan, and... With what? I asked. Cassidy. With what, Derek? Your checking account has $400 in it. You have $60,000 in consumer debt. You have no documentation of any investment or deal or path to income that I have been able to identify in this conversation. So I'm asking genuinely with, what are you going to pay it back? Nicole came back from the kitchen. She sat down. She didn't look at Derek. Nicole, I said, do you want to add anything? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I told him to stop. 6 months ago, I told him we needed to stop taking money from Linda and pay it back. She looked at her husband. He said it was fine. He said Linda didn't mind. She minded, I said. She didn't say so because she was trying to protect both of you. But she has been sending you money from an account I funded and letting this mortgage deteriorate. And the result is that my stepfather, who has been fighting cancer, is 3 months away from losing his house. Frank stood up. He didn't say anything else to Derek. He just stood up, steadied himself with one hand on the back of his chair, and walked down the hall toward the bedroom. I heard the door close softly. My mother was staring at the centerpiece. Derek and Nicole left within the hour. Not loudly, not with a scene more quietly than I expected. Actually, with the deflated and furtive energy of people who have been caught and are processing the size of what's been caught. Derek carried their overnight bags out in 2 trips. Nicole carried her own bag and the wrapped gifts they had brought, which were still sitting under the tree unopened. At the door, Derek paused. I am going to pay it back, he said. To me, not to my mother. That's not nothing. I know what I did. I'm going to fix it. I hope so, I said. I closed the door behind them. My mother was still at the table when I came back. I sat down across from her. The candles were burning low. The pot roast had gone cold. I was trying to keep the peace. she said, without looking up. I know. I didn't want Frank to know how bad things were getting. He was so sick, Cassidy. He was so sick, and I couldn't add this to it. I thought Derek would come through. I kept telling myself, 1 more month. Derek will sort it out, and then I won't have to tell Frank any of it. And in the meantime, you let him believe Derek was responsible for keeping the house. She closed her eyes. It felt better, she said. For Derek to be the one who was helping. He's had such a hard time. He never found his footing the way you did. I just wanted him to feel. I wanted your father to see him as capable. Frank, I said. She opened her eyes. What? He's Frank. Not my father, Frank. I said it gently. And I understand wanting Derek to succeed. I understand covering for him because you love him and it hurt to watch him struggle. I understand all of it, Mom. But you used the money I sent to fund it. And you let me keep sending it every month for over 2 years without telling me what was actually happening. I paused. That's the part I'm going to need some time to work through. She started to cry again, fully this time, and I sat with her until it passed. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, and I rebuilt their financial picture from the foundation. I ran Frank's credit report, his real one, not the version my mother had been narrating. The co-signed car loan was there, current but barely, with a payment that was straining the budget further. The mortgage delinquency was there. 2 medical accounts that had gone to collections during a period when the insurance reimbursement had been delayed and no one had followed up accounts I had not known about. Accounts that would take time to clear. The total gap to reinstate the mortgage and bring the delinquent accounts current was just under $7,000. I had it. I transferred it that night directly to the mortgage servicer and directly to the collections accounts, with the confirmation numbers recorded in my spreadsheet. Then I did something I should have done 29 months ago, when I first set up the arrangement, but hadn't, because I was trusting, and because she was my mother, and because I was busy being competent in every other area of my life. I restructured everything. I closed the Midwest Federal account and opened a new one that required my co-authorization for any transfer over $50. I set up direct payments to the mortgage servicer and the utilities from that account, so that the money could not be intercepted between receipt and payment. I set up a shared view of the account dashboard that both my mother and Frank could access, so there were no more private financials, no more one person handling it while the other trusted that it was handled. I talked to Frank the next morning, Christmas morning, while my mother was still asleep. We sat at the kitchen table with coffee, and I showed him everything what I had been sending, what had been diverted, where things stood now, what the new structure looked like. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he wrapped his hands around his mug and looked out the window at the backyard, at the bird feeder that needed refilling, at the frost on the grass. I owe you an apology, he said. You don't, I said. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have looked. He turned to me. I let your mother carry too much of this, because I didn't have the energy to carry it myself, and then I didn't ask enough questions. That's on me. You were sick, I said. People who are sick still have to pay attention, he said. I just didn't want to. It was easier to believe things were fine. We sat quietly for a while. She loves him too much to see him clearly, Frank said. About my brother. That's not an excuse. But it's the truth. I know, I said. And you? He looked at me. You've been doing this since before the second diagnosis, since the first time things got hard. You showed up, quietly, every month. I didn't say anything. I'm going to spend some time thinking about how I missed that, he said. How I let myself not see it. You deserve better than that, Cass. I reached over and put my hand over his. His was rough and thinner than it used to be, the hand of a man who had spent 2 years in treatment, and it held mine back with a warmth that was entirely real. The legal piece took several months to sort out. Derek and Nicole signed a formal repayment agreement, drafted by a family attorney, for the $21,400. The payments were structured over 4 years, automatically debited, so there was no opportunity for them to decide on a given month that other things were more pressing. If they missed 2 consecutive payments, the full balance became immediately due, and I had the right to pursue collection. Derek did not fight the agreement. I think, in the end, he understood that he had gotten off more lightly than the situation warranted, and that I knew that, and that the agreement was me choosing to handle it in the way least likely to permanently destroy what remained of the family, rather than the way most likely to result in consequences proportional to what he had done. Their marriage survived the winter, but just barely. Nicole got a job in the spring, her first full-time position in 3 years, and I think the act of having her own income changed the geometry of things between them in ways that were either clarifying or destabilizing depending on which of them you asked. Frank completed his last treatment cycle in February. His most recent scan came back clean. We don't use the word cured because his oncologist is careful about language, but we use the word hopeful, and that turns out to be enough. I visited in the spring. My mom had planted something in the front garden, a row of something that hadn't come up yet, just dark-turned earth with small markers. She walked me through what each marker was, where she'd gotten the seeds, what they'd look like in August. It was the most normal conversation we'd had in a long time. I don't have a tidy lesson to close with. I don't think what happened to my family is the kind of thing that resolves into a clean moral. My brother loves my parents in his way, even if his way includes taking from them. My mother loves her children in a way that made her willing to compromise her marriage to protect one of us from judgment. Frank is a man who trusted too much and has spent months recalibrating what trust should look like. And I am a person who knew how to build structures and paper trails and control frameworks for other people's money, but needed 2.5 years to turn that same attention toward my own family. What I know is this: the money is documented now. The accounts are structured so that they can't be quietly redirected. Frank knows what comes in and what goes out, and so do I. And my mother knows that we know, and that accountability, that shared visibility, has done more for their household than $52,000 ever could have on its own. The house is safe. The mortgage is current. The bird feeder in the backyard is full. That's where we are.